Hello, everyone. Thank you, Yuli. Really, I thank you for the invitation. So today we want to talk about these political and economic relations between Latin America and the Caribbean and the Indo-Pacific region. You know, the studies on interregional relations between Latin America and the Caribbean and the Indo-Pacific typically analyze relations countries in Latin America. Today, I will try to expand the scope to include other actors with which Latin America interact in the Asia or in the Indo-Pacific region, such as India and Japan. Here, it is important to note that there is a great deal of diversity among countries in both regions, resulting in different types of relationship. So we will see that some are more intense than others. However, in this presentation, I will explore this interregional relationship in general terms. So you will have here only a general presentation. So, and also we will discuss interregional collaboration within a multilateral institution. So we can go to the second slide. Okay, as you can see here, the presentation is divided into the following section. So first, I will show you some data about the Latin American region to provide some context. Second, we will discuss economic relation, which primarily consist of trade. Third, we will discuss the political and strategic relations established between some countries in both regions. And finally, I will describe or explore the multilateral interaction that I mentioned earlier. So let me start and we can go to the next slide. Why I show you this map? So as you can see here, Latin America and the Caribbean are divided into several regions. I will not discuss each relationship in detail, but you have to know that the region is diverse in terms of its economics and political relationships. Therefore, when I refer to Latin America and the Caribbean, I will do so fairly generally, but I won't forget the region's diversity. And of course, the same with the Indo-Pacific region. Next. So in this slide, you can see the Latin America's primary trading partners. The graph on the left illustrates the top partners in 2007 and the changes that occur on the right side by 2023. Although the 2023 data shows that the United States remain the Latin Americans' main trading partner, this is primarily due to its trade volume with Mexico. So when we isolate trade between Mexico and the United States, China becomes the region main partner. And the next largest partner in the Asia Pacific, you can see also there are Japan, South Korea, and India. However, you can see also if we compare Latin America's and the Caribbean trade with China, the volume is definitely lower. So we can go to the next slide. Great. In the context of investment in research and development, you can see investment made by Latin America and the Caribbean and another group of countries there. So why I am showing you that? Because interestingly, unlike these other countries, investment in research and development in Latin America comes from governments. So not from the private sectors. And why I show you that? Because that is problematic. It indicates a lack of opportunities and incentive for private investment. You know for sure that investment in research and development can really in a positive way impact economic development and reduce social inequality and economic stagnation. So that is something that the Latin American country and the Caribbean has to work on. Then we can go to the next slide. So you see it here, what I already showed, a really diverse region with some main trade partners. The first one, if we include Mexico, is China. And also you have a region that is in the needs more investment in research and development. And now we will see it, what happened with the economic exchange between Latin America and China and India, just to mention these, these interactions. So we can go to the next slide. And here you can see it, that China, as I already said, is a main trading partner of many Latin American countries. This includes, for example, Brazil, but not Mexico. And what is interesting in this graphic is that shows the Atlantic Council projections for these relations. So, as well as a comparison with the United States and the European Union. And you can see it here that in the 2000s, China's trade relationship with the region was almost insignificant. That is interesting of this relationship between China and this region. But however, China's trade share of trade in the region has since exceeded that of the European Union, including the United Kingdom. Furthermore, the influence of the United States in the region is projected to decline, no, and really to decline if we see it until 2035. Can we go to the next? Great. And here, as for the trade balance, and you know, at this day it's very popular to talk about trade balance, especially from the US. It shows that countries such as Brazil, Peru, Uruguay, and also Chile have a favorable balance in trade with China. However, no, and you can see it there, that in the left side of the graph. But however, projection indicates that this will decline by 2035. So turning negative for most countries except Peru and Chile. And that is a projection that we can see already in the region. Next. So another aspect that I want to show you here of the China's relationship with the region is the loans that it has granted China to certain countries in the Latin American and Caribbean region. And here, so Venezuela was by far the main recipient of Chinese loans, followed by Brazil, and to a lesser extent, Ecuador and Argentina. So, and where were going these loans? China has granted the largest number of loans to the energy, also infrastructure and mining sectors. And I think that is not a surprise for you. Um, and here, what is also, we will see in the following slide, and that is interesting thing is about the continuity of loans to Brazil and not to Venezuela. For example, here we can see with Brazil. This is a list of some of the projects for which loans have been allocated. So as you can see, it is smaller in the upper right corner of this graph. There have been years with higher loan distributions. No, there is not a real continuity, but in a specific period of time, Brazil have received this money. So Brazil have continued to receive new loans from China to a lesser extent, at least until 2023. And if we see the next slide, here shows the loans to Venezuela. Loans were granted until 2015, when then suddenly stopped. No, and you can see it also in this right upper side of the graph. And this, I can tell you, this is an interesting case study of China's relation with the region. We will see it not only because of economic issues, but also because political and strategic issues. So, and maybe in the Q&A we can discuss more about it. So far, we have briefly, because I want to go just briefly through this data and explore the intensity of trade between China and the region. But I want to go and to also show you more about the trade with India, because then we can do some kind of comparison. So I will jump straight to trade with India. So we can go to the next slide. In this graph, so illustrates India's export, import, and trade balance with Latin American and the Caribbean countries. Here, although exports have increased over the years, so Indian exports, Indian imports have grown more strongly, resulting in a negative trade balance for India. And that is something different. We already talked about the trade between China and the Latin American and Caribbean countries, and we have seen tendency for negative trade balance for Latin America. And here we have another reality. So the gap increased significantly, no, this negative trade balance for India from 2030 onward, before returning to a similar trend. And here, Latin America mainly exports minerals such as gold and agricultural products, which is not so different what Latin American and Caribbean countries export to China. Meanwhile, India exports pharmaceutical, information technology, textiles, and other products to the region, to the Latin American region. We can go to the next. And that is something that is just introduction about the trade relationship that you can have about this two regions. But what I am more interested in is to go to the collaboration that had politically and strategically that has the Latin American and Caribbean region with the Indo-Pacific region. Why? Because we don't have a lot about it. Most of the academic studies focus on the economic exchange, but not so much about this political and strategic relationship that I want to see in the next slides. So here we return to China, Latin America, and the Caribbean relation. These are the countries with which China has signed bilateral strategic partnership agreements. The most visible aspect of China's relationship with Latin America and the Caribbean, it is, as I said, the economic relationship, because the region has natural resources and market, and you know that's something that China needs. However, this strategic partnership demonstrates or shows China's intention to establish broader relationship in the long term, including political coordination to influence international institutions and cooperation in strategic technological areas. And it's really, when China established a strategic partnership with one country, we're talking about comprehensive partnerships. And interesting information here, because you know that when we talk about the strategic partnership, most of the people think that the first strategic partner of China was Russia, but actually the first strategic partnership that China signed was with Brazil in 1993, and with Russia was later in 1994. This agreement includes coordination and are supported by also high-level visits. Just to give you an example, so since 2013, you know, Xi Jinping had visited the region. We're talking about the Latin America and Caribbean region 6 times. So that means that it's surpassing the combined visit of the last 3 US presidents, that are in the same region. So we can go to the next slide. Then another important aspect of China's political relation with the region is its progress in establishing diplomatic relations with countries that had previously recognized Taiwan. And this has been especially evident since 2017. So you can see there that Panama broke diplomatic relations with Taiwan, establishing the diplomatic relation with China in June 2017, followed by Dominican Republic in the Caribbean, and then El Salvador in 2018 as well, Nicaragua in December 2021, most recently Honduras in 2023. And you know, Taiwan has the most number of diplomatic relations in so that was a positive result. To the next slide. Then another aspect of China and region is, as you know, the Belt and Road initiative launched in 2013, included America as a natural extension of this route. And it is with that it's began with Panama's inclusion. And 21 countries in the region have since signed the Memorandum of Understanding, so are part of this Belt and Road initiative. One of the most significant projects to date is the financing of the Chancay megaport in Peru. Maybe you hear about it. And that is primarily through investment from Costco Shipping. Why I mentioned this megaport? Because this port provides a direct route from Shanghai to Chancay in Peru without intermediate stop that early was necessary to do. So the journey is reduced to 10 days. They can do it in 10 days, Shanghai to Chancay. So meaning lower transportation and lower product costs. The port is also strategically important because in the event of a disruption to other routes, such as the Panama Canal, China can still reach the Atlantic countries in the region by using this port and also land routes. So for China, this project is also a success that demonstrates its ability and willingness to invest in scale regional projects in Latin America and the Caribbean. And also especially for South America. And I told you that we have different sub-regions in Latin America and the Caribbean. So now I'm talking specifically for South America. It is an opportunity. So it would likely affect other ports. We have another important port such as Callao in Peru and Valparaíso in Chile. But this port further highlights the need to expand infrastructure projects in the region. So a larger rail network and highway system must be created, and they are working on to transport products from the Pacific to the Atlantic and vice versa. We can go to the next one. So now you can see I will introduce you a little bit the relationship between Japan and the Latin American and Caribbean countries. And I focus in this Japan diplomatic initiative that they have toward Latin America. That was launched in 2024. And this initiative includes several areas of cooperation, such as cooperation on international issues, including maritime affairs, disarmament, and non-proliferation. They refer to the promotion of diplomacy through diverse networking. And here, the largest Nikkei community in the world is located in Latin America and the Caribbean. So we are talking about around 2.4 million Nikkei individuals residing in the Latin American region. And this represents approximately like 60% of the 3.9 million Nikkei people worldwide. So that is a really important network for for Japan in Latin America. They also, or this initiative that I mentioned, include a cooperation in the natural disaster prevention. Interesting is as well the promotion of gender equality. Um, and that is an interesting also aspect of Japan's cooperation with Latin American countries is about this promoting gender equality. According to the Global Gender Gap Index, no country has achieved gender parity. It's better positioned island. But and the index measures the health and survival gap, educational attainment gap, economic participation, and opportunity gap, and political empowerment gap. And that is something or a topic that is very, very relevant for Japan, but also for the Latin American and Caribbean um, regions. And here, maybe you are asking or thinking, okay, but what it means? What are the specific initiatives that they have together? Just to mention some of these on maritime issues, they are looking, or the Japanese, for ensuring a safe and stable environment for using the Panama Canal. No, that is not only because economic interest, but also strategic one. So Japan is financing part of the canal's expansion through Japanese banks. Japan is also Japan also monitors the impact of climate change on marine life in Jamaican waters, and also supports small and medium um, sized enterprises in Peru, Bolivia, and Brazil with the Nikkei community. So this network that I already mentioned is really active in the relation between Japan and some Latin American countries, especially with Peru, Bolivia, and Brazil. Then on disarmament and a war free of nuclear weapons, they coordinate with international institutions. And also, there have been an ongoing cooperation program with Chile since the 60s to train personnel for natural disasters. So there are a lot of interesting cooperation. Maybe they are not the main trade partners, but they cooperate also in this aspect that I mentioned it. So we can go to the next slide. And here, I want to introduce you a little about, okay, we see what is happening in general at the in the economic aspect. No, so we talk about this trade and loans, and then we went to the bilateral strategic partnership and how they are cooperating, and also the different aspects in the cooperation within Japan and Latin American countries. But not everything is on the bilateral level. There are also cooperations at the multilateral level. And again, we have to come back to China, because China actively cooperate with the community of Latin America and Caribbean states forum, that is CELAC. And this regional integration in the Latin American Caribbean region includes all countries in the Americas. And what is interesting, that include all countries except the United States and Canada. So here the forum that China has with CELAC holds regular meeting, as has bilateral joint action plans, um, including cooperation in politics, security, economic, infrastructure, and also global governance or coordination for changing or influence global governance. Meetings have also taken place between foreign minister for Japan and CELAC. So on one side we have this cooperation of this for China, CELAC, that is very important. China shows is really interested to have this channel, direct channel, a clear channel with all Latin American and Caribbean countries, and not only this interaction at the bilateral level, but also Japan has some relation with CELAC. For example, they have, as I said, some meetings at between the foreign ministers from Japan and CELAC countries. And the most recent meeting occurred in September 2025, so this year. And in the case of Japan and CELAC, the meetings focus primarily on dialogue regarding, I don't know, international issues, such as the most recent discussion about North Korea's nuclear program. No, but it's more limited if we compare the cooperation between China and CELAC. Another important, I would say, interregional institution is the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, so APEC. And as you probably know, this forum seeks to reduce trade and investment barriers without creating legal obligation. No, that is more voluntary, we can say it. And Latin American countries that are member of the APEC are Chile, Mexico, and Peru. Last year the APEC meeting was held in Peru, and I was talking about the Chancay Megaport, and the Chancay Megaport was inaugurated during this APEC meeting. So the Xi Jinping was attending this inauguration. And the next meeting will be held in South Korea starting on October 31st. So in some days. And I can tell you that this meeting is important because it comes aimed at escalating conflict between China and the United States. Because let's not forget that the United States is also part of this forum. So for sure the next day we will have a lot to discuss about the APEC. I don't know whether there will a possible meeting between Xi Jinping and Trump, and we'll see it. Then we can go to the next slide that I will start to finish in. As you see, what I try to do with this presentation, to do a general presentation, just to show you some information in trade, laws, strategic and political relation. What about not only China, but mainly China, Japan, India, and also this multilateral interaction between these two regions. So, but here, what I would like to highlight are few key points. First is that the relationship between the two regions continues to be dominated by China. That is definitely, and we see it from the first slide that I showed you when we saw the trade interactions. So China is the largest trading partner of Latin America and the Caribbean region, if we excluding Mexico. One risk here, however, for Latin American and Caribbean countries, it is heavy dependence on exporting raw materials to China. And we know that. But the thing is that prolonged Chinese, I don't know, economic problems or recession could directly affect Latin American and Caribbean countries. Um, then political and strategic aspect needs more attention in the analysis, and I am in the academic analysis. And a starting point for this is strategic partnerships. You know, you can find a long-term tradition already with this strategic partnership. Therefore, I mentioned you the strategic partnership between Brazil and China, because what I see, if you look at the bilateral agreement of all these countries in Latin America with China in this aspect, you will see that the base was the base of this strategic partnership is what we find in the relation between Brazil and China. Another point that I would like to highlight is that China expanded its diplomatic relations with Latin American countries and the Caribbean, especially, Central America and the Caribbean, and thereby displacing Taiwan. And that is an important achievement of Chinese diplomacy. And maybe in the Q&A, we can discuss more about it. There is also still room for Latin American countries and the Caribbean to diversify their relations with countries in the Indo-Pacific. One such country is India, with which trade is complementary. So there is still room for more diversification from the Latin American and Caribbean countries. And other point that I wanted to mention is that the main investment opportunity is in development and innovation. Therefore, I show you at the beginning this graph showing you that the investment in development and innovation in Latin American and Caribbean region is coming mainly from governments, and that is definitely not enough and not sustainable. And at the multilateral level, it is more clear, I think, that CELAC is positioned as the body for establishing dialogue and cooperation with the region that is using already China, but also Japan, but probably we will see it with other countries in the Indo-Pacific. And we go to the next slide. As you can see on this slide, for sure you know this meme. There is more material to discuss that I did not address in my presentation because, as I said, I stayed at a general level. So one relevant point within the relation between the Latin American and Caribbean and the Indo-Pacific regions is the role of the United States. And here I'm referring to triangular relationship. Maybe we can discuss during the Q&A session about this thing. So next slide. I don't know how do you pronounce, but I think I have to say Kitos. So thank you very much.